President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met today to sign a minerals deal. Zelensky arrived in the United States already with pretty high tensions between him and Trump. And frankly, it seems those tensions spilled over into a press conference as the two leaders literally got into a shouting match. And now the overall deal has been canceled. So, what does all this mean on multiple fronts? What does it mean for the war between Ukraine and Russia? What is the next step for Ukraine and the United States? The questions go on. And here now to discuss these issues is Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. He's the Executive Vice President here at FRC. Lieutenant General Boykin previously served as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence under the George W. Bush administration. General Boykin, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Good to be with you, Jody.
Well, listen, I know you're busy, and thank you for joining us by phone right now. What a day it has been. I'm sure you're staying on top of the Zelensky interaction with President Trump and Vice President Vance today. Very, very terse exchange over Ukraine's future. General Boykin, your opinion, what led to this breakdown, and what are we supposed to read into this situation now?
Well, I think that in some ways it's classic Donald Trump. He said he's going to get out of the Ukraine. He said he's going to bring that war to an end. And I think that he knows very much that the only impediment to doing that is Zelensky. And so I think I was not surprised by anything he said to him, but the veracity with which he said some of it was something that I hadn't seen before between two heads of state. But I think what this does, though, is it marks the end of the conflict there. With any kind of support from the United States, I don't think he's going to put up with that. And it was a very bad error, unforced error on the part of Zelensky, I think, in terms of the way he acted.
Wow, very interesting. You know, I was with you, shocked at the whole thing. I've never seen anything like this as well, and you certainly have much more experience than I do. But Trump said Zelensky was gambling with the possibility of World War III. In your opinion, what do you think the president specifically meant by that statement?
Well, since this whole thing started, we've been talking about this could lead to World War III, because if you remember back when they went into to the invasion, they had been up working with another country on a nuclear exercise. You remember that? They were
Yes.
practicing the launch of so that was a message to us. That was a message to the whole world, is that we are ready. We're serious about this, and we're ready, if necessary, if pushed, to use a nuclear weapon. So I think that they haven't done it simply because they never really intended to do it, but they wanted to make sure they put the marker down on this. But they've got a lot to lose. If they pop a nuke, you got about three nuclear countries sitting on your border there, and that wouldn't be a good idea. So I don't think that's going to happen, certainly not as the situation is right now. Now, if it gets worse and Vladimir is backed in a corner, you can see a tactical nuclear weapon or something. But I don't think at this point that's something that we should be expecting.
Well, that's good to hear. You know, I think a lot of us knew tensions were high going into this meeting, but I don't know that any of us anticipated what we actually saw and what came out of it. So where do the peace talks go from here, General Boykin? How is this going to affect the war at large?
Yeah, the way I see this thing unfolding is I see the U.S. brokering some kind of agreement. Now, the Russians, they're not going to be pushovers on this thing either, but I think that we're going to see some peace agreement, ceasefire, if you will, that will be brokered by the United States with Russia, and then it will be handed to Zelensky and said, "Here it is. If you can live with this, we're good to go. If you can't, then the U.S. support is going to be very slim in the future." But here's something else, though. I think that, and I think you and I have actually talked about this before, I think we ought to take all the Russian money that we've frozen and we ought to start putting it in our own coffers, because we've spent so much money. What is it, $30 billion?
Right.
I think that's
Yes.
what Trump said today. It's about $30 billion. Well, why don't we either take that money and give it to Zelensky and say, "This is it. We're out of here," and call us when you have your party at the end of the war. But I don't think that there's much else we can do. We could take, the money from Russia, the money from North Korea, places like that, and have them start funding more. But he's got to lean on the Europeans, and he's got to demand that they start paying their share. Because remember, when he was first in office, he went over and talked to NATO, and he said to NATO, "Pay your share. We're not going to carry you anymore." And he went over and talked to all the heads of Islamic states, and he said, "Run them out, run them out. Or we're not going to deal with you anymore." He's talking about run out the terrorists. And they started doing that. So it's hard to say which way this thing will go, but I think that he'll get an agreement with the Russians, and Zelensky will probably reject it. And at that point, I don't know where we go from there.
Wow. Actually, the president said it's more like $300 billion that's been spent, because I recall just being there myself in Congress, the amount of money going to Ukraine was unbelievable. How do you think all of this now is going to impact other countries, be it adversaries like China or be it allies like many of those in Europe? Is there a shakeup going to happen there, in your opinion?
Well, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as it could be considered a failure for the United States because we got in it. And if you get in it, be in it to win it. And obviously, we weren't ready to go the distance. So you could look at it that way. But on the other hand, you could look at it and say, this was not Donald Trump's war. And Donald Trump has said all along, even before he was reelected, that if I get reelected, we're going to get out of there. We shouldn't be there in the first place. So we'll see what it does. But I think the Chinese are smart enough now, and Trump has shown so much resolve. I don't think the Chinese want to be horsing around right now because they've got too much to lose, and they've got too many internal problems, not the least of which is their economy. And then the North Koreans, they'll do what the Russians tell them to do, basically. So I don't see much threat as a result of this.
Speaking of Russia, one last time, General Boykin, and we've got less than a minute. Are you aware of any response from Russia to the developments today?
I have not seen anything, but I've been on a couple of different podcasts and all today that took up the time when all of this was going on. So I haven't seen anything yet, but there will be something that'll come out here pretty quickly if it hasn't already.
Yep, great point. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, thank you so much for taking time. I know you're busy today, as always, but discussing these rather shocking and important developments today, thank you, my friend. God bless.
Good to be with you.